Hello, BookTube. I have yet another tag. This is a 3-tag day. I've been tagged in 3 different tags. Fine by me. I went a long period, nobody tagging me at all. So this one is the Girl Scout cookie tag, which I've seen. I've actually seen a few videos like this. But I was tagged. This was created by Melinda at Web of Stories. And I was tagged by Book Chat with Pat. And when she tagged me, I responded via Voxer and said, well, I don't know. I've already got 2 tags to do today. Isn't 3 a bit much? And she said, you'll do this tag. And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe I won't have time. She said, maybe you misunderstood me. Read my lips. You'll do this tag, or I'll pull out your eyeballs and stomp on them while you watch. And I said, well, if you pull out my eyeballs, how would I be able to watch? And she said, enough! I tell you, it's always the nice ones. So I'm going to do the Girl Scout cookie tag, which for those of you who are not in America, you're going to be baffled. The Girl Scouts are a little organization. They were actually plagiarized from a European organization, so you might have one. And they have their own cookies, and God only knows what kind of crack cocaine they put in them, because Girl Scout cookies are better than anything. And they sometimes go door to door. They don't go door to door much anymore. They tend to have booths or tables at the hubs of public transportation or at the library. And the reason they don't go door to door, and again, if you're not living in America, this might not be the first thing that leaps to mind, is that if they did that, they would all be shot dead. Because this is America. And we have 700 million guns in this country. So it's extremely dangerous to do anything in public in this country. And knocking on someone's door, you might as well write out your will ahead of time. So if you come to America, make sure to ask your host about Girl Scout cookies, because they are a kind of a little American tradition here. And the prompts are based on different kinds of Girl Scout cookies. The first one is Trefoils, a classic novel you love. I revisited this particular novel just recently because I am now in a suicide pact, a Romeo and Juliet pact with the author Janet Wortman to do corresponding NaNoWriMo projects for November. We are both going to be writing Elizabethan novels about 2 characters who knew each other. So that has been driving me back to the Elizabethan period, to Elizabethan history. Elizabethan primary documents will come next, but also all the fiction of the Elizabethan era, and there's a mountain of it, an absolute mountain of it. And I went back to Kenilworth by Sir Walter Scott, which has always been my favorite of his novels, more than Ivanhoe, more than Rob Roy. It's a gigantic, gaudy, wonderful, magnum opus of Elizabethan fiction, and I love it more every time I go back to it. And it involves a lot of the characters that both Janet and I are going to be writing about. So I went back to Kenilworth just recently. I absolutely loved it. Just absolutely loved it. Then number 2 is Lemon Ups, a book you find inspiring. I'm afraid there's not a one. There's not a one. There's no single book I find inspiring. Then prompt number 3 is S'mores, a comforting book. I chose this, Margaret Stanger's book, That Quail, Robert. Oh, it's a century old. It was a big, big hit. It's a tiny little book. Let me know if you want me to find you a copy. There are always copies of this at the Brattle. Always copies. It's a tiny little thing, a little memoir of her taking in a quail. She takes in a quail and lives with the bird. And that is a huge subgenre of nature writing, is people who live with birds. This is one of the best examples that I know. It takes me half an hour to reread it, and I love re-entering this world. It just talk about comforting. It is a perfect example of that for me. I mean, your comfort books will be different. Then prompt number 4 is Adventurfuls, and this is an adventure novel and an adventure book. And this dovetails nicely with Spring Into Adventure, which is another BookTube event all about adventure writing. And I was amazed when I got to this prompt, because I just recently reread this book. This is Eugenie Clark, The Lady and the Sharks. And this is all about Janie Clark's study of sharks. She got in the water and swam with sharks, including, as you can see on this cover, species that are extremely dangerous. And learned all about them, saw what they were doing, watched what they watched what they notice and what they don't notice. It's just it's a terrific book. So That definitely counts as an adventurous tale. Then number 5 is Samoas, a book that blends 2 or more genres. I actually have an example in mind here. I would have said it doesn't blend 2 genres, but I've been slowly talked into maybe grudgingly accepting that it does. This is Inside Story by Martin Amis. You can see right there, it says Big as Life, that it's a novel. It's not. I would have said, until I was recently grudgingly talked into it, I would have said this is 100% nonfiction. Now I say it's 99% nonfiction. There are fictional elements in here, fictional flourishes in here. There are things in here that didn't really happen. So I guess you could say that it blends 2 or more genres. It's still mostly a memoir. But I will allow it just briefly. Just briefly. And it wasn't, the person who did that convincing was not Joe Spivey, in case you're wondering. Joe Spivey just recently did a People in April video of his own about Martin Amis. He has said many times on his channel that it was Martin Amis and his novels that pulled him into the world of reading, into the world of actual reading, not school reading. And that he owes Martin Amis a debt for that, but has since come to see the flaws of this author. I agree completely. I definitely know how that feels. But I still think deep down inside that Joe Spivey is destined at some point in his 90 years coming to be the great bard of this particular clique of authors. All of the people in Amis's orbit, Amis and Hitchens and William Boyd and James Fenton and Clive James, all the people that were in their set, they need a bard. And I think the kind of bard that they should have is someone who loved all their stuff intemperately, head over heels, and then wised up and grew up out of it. That's the kind of bard you want, because you have the grounding of affection and even obligation. You owe them something, but you can now look at them critically. I don't know. Sooner or later the time will come when Joe Spivey will do a huge reread of this author. I predict that he will not find a barren wasteland when he does. I predict that he'll have a lot to teach a lot of people when he does that. But anyway, we don't have to talk about Joe Spivey. Okay. He preoccupies us enough as it is. Then number 6 is Do-Si-Dos, either a book you love that everyone seems to hate, or a book you hate that everyone seems to love. Here I would pick a standard go-to for me, which is the later Dune novels of Frank Herbert. Not the Brian Herbert books. I hate those, and so does every other right-thinking individual in the Alpha Quadrant. But the later Dune books. The stereotypical characterization of the Dune books by Frank Herbert is that Dune is a masterpiece. Probably the greatest science fiction novel ever written. The Dune Messiah takes a misstep. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not the same at all. It's a drastic misstep. And then Children of Dune recaptures a huge amount of the magic of Dune, the energy and tensile compactness of Dune. And then the stereotypical view is that the rest of the books fall off from there and are terrible. God, Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. And I don't believe that's true at all. I think that Chapter House and Heretics are really, really good books. And of course, God, Emperor is my favorite of the Dune books, including Dune. It's a little bit of an iconoclast. I've never met anyone else who actually thought that way about the Dune books. But I do. Then question number 7. I thought we were never going to get here. Question number 7 is Thin Mints, the only Girl Scout cookie flavor that is any good. And oh my God, when I am passing a Girl Scout cookie table, I just tell them, all right, take a tote bag and just sweep all of the Thin Mints into the tote bag. I'll take them all. But this is one of your all-time favorite books. Here I go with People April again. I'll go with Mary Queen of Scots by Antonia Fraser. This is a big, fat biography of Mary Queen of Scots, and it is wonderful. Just wonderful. Just full and readable and wonderfully opinionated and colorful. I fell in love with it when it first came out. I read it when it first came out and just loved it. And every time I've ever gone back to it ever since, in all those decades, it never dims, never gets worse. I love it. Hi, baby. Who's the baby? Huh? You would scream at Girl Scouts. And then the last is Tagalongs, and this is to tag some fellow booktubers. And I'm afraid I'm going to punt here like I have been in all my other tags today, because I don't know who's done this. I don't know who wants to be tagged by me. I don't know who does tags or would want to do this tag. if you've watched this video and you want to do this tag, by all means do, because these are interesting. I would love to see the books that you would pull for these. So anyway, that is it. Thank you very much, Pat, for tagging me. I will post this along with all my other tags today, and stop complaining about being left out of tags. I'm clearly not left out of tags anymore. Maybe I'll get to be one of the cool kids. See, now we're back to talking about Joe Spivey. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.